There's a tax loophole sitting inside the United States tax code that most homeowners walk right past every single day, and it's completely legal, fully documented, and hiding in plain sight. We're talking about Section 121, and if you've owned a home and never heard of it, your accountant may owe you an apology. Here's the setup. If you've lived in your primary residence for at least 2 of the last 5 years, the IRS lets you exclude up to $250,000 in capital gains from your taxes. And if you're married, that number doubles to $500,000. That's not a deduction, that's not a deferral, that is completely tax-free money walking out the door and straight into your pocket. Now, most people hear that and immediately think, great, I'll just roll it into my next dream home. And sure, that works, but that's also the most predictable, least powerful thing you can do with $250,000 in tax-free capital. We had a client who looked at that same situation and said, what if I didn't do what everyone else does? Instead of buying another primary residence with those proceeds, they bought a rental property, one that generated monthly cash flow from day one. Think about what just happened there. They used a government-sanctioned tax break to fund an income-producing asset, which is essentially the IRS accidentally becoming your business partner. Now, they didn't stay in a rental forever. They rented themselves a place to live temporarily while their money went to work. And that's where most people squirm a little, because renting feels like losing when you've been a homeowner. But comfort is expensive. And in this case, the discomfort of renting for a season was the exact trade that unlocked the next chapter. The rental income from that investment property started compounding, not in a cryptocurrency, not in a stock ticker, but in bricks and mortar and monthly checks. They then took that cash flow and used it as a springboard to acquire another property, and then another, stacking assets the way a chess player stacks positioning moves, rather than swinging for a flashy one-move win. Here's the historical pattern worth paying attention to. Real estate has rewarded the patient and punished the impulsive more consistently than almost any other asset class across the last 100 years. The people who lost weren't the ones who bought, they were the ones who bought emotionally, over-leveraged, and had no runway to wait out a dip. The misconception we need to address head-on is this idea that Section 121 is only useful if you're selling and upgrading your home linearly, bigger house, better neighborhood, end of story. That is the smallest possible interpretation of a tool that was built wide enough to drive a rental portfolio through. What our client did wasn't reckless speculation, it was disciplined, staged, and sequential, which is the kind of strategy that looks boring in the short term and looks like genius in the rearview mirror. They didn't try to time the market. They didn't go all in on one mega deal. They just kept moving the chess pieces with patience and process. The irony here is almost poetic. The tax code, written by the government, contains a provision that, if used strategically, can help an ordinary homeowner build a portfolio of income-generating properties without handing a dime of capital gains to the IRS. You almost have to laugh or cry, depending on how many times you've sold a home and never thought to ask this question. Now, let's be real about risk. Every move in this strategy requires sizing correctly, not overextending, and having a clear-eyed view of what the cash flow math actually looks like on paper before you sign anything. Conviction without numbers is just feelings, and feelings don't service debt. The discipline here isn't just financial, it's psychological, because the moment you hand over proceeds from a home sale, your brain is screaming to put it back into another home, something familiar and comfortable. Overriding that instinct with a spreadsheet and a long-term vision is genuinely one of the hardest, most rewarding things you can do as an investor. Our client today lives in a dream home, not because they earned a massive salary or won some windfall, but because they made a series of boring, intelligent, well-timed decisions, starting with one tax exclusion that most people ignore. The compounding wasn't magic, it was math, repeated with patience. At the end of the day, Section 121 isn't just a tax break, it's a doorway, and most people peek through it, nod politely, and walk away without stepping inside. The ones who step inside and ask, how do I use this as a launch pad, not just a landing pad, are the ones writing a completely different financial story 10 years from now. Whether you're just starting to think about this strategy or you're ready to move on your next property, we can help you get started, whether that's real estate investing, home contracting, work, or finding the right lenders. So check out our links in the description below.